You will fail. So what? Everybody does. But your gym, your watch, your yoga pants, they pretend you won't. So when you miss a day, eat the pancakes. Give up on a workout? You failed? Seriously, what the hell? We're Body. We've been a part of that too, but not anymore. At Body, we're rejecting perfection and embracing reality. Not in a Pizza Monday kind of way, in a loving your whole life kind of way. In a, this workout is fun and it's okay if I take a week off kind of way. In an, I'm eating healthy and it's okay if I indulge kind of way. In a, I like myself no matter what kind of way. Yeah, you will fail. We all will. But we're not going to let that be the end. You see that? We're already making progress. So let's keep going. We are Body. Start your free trial at body.com. That's BODI.com.
Guys, it's happening. Sonny Hayes is making his Formula One debut. I know, it's a little bit silly. You might be thinking, who in the world is this? What is happening at the moment? And what do you mean by Sonny Hayes? Is this some sort of code word? But no, it's not just Sonny Hayes. Joshua Pierce is also going to be on the Formula One grid. And I'm thinking this time, Kunal, if there is one way for a driver on debut to make an impact, it's to take Max Verstappen out. Come on, Sonny Hayes, be a legend. Take him out and you will forever be remembered as the man who destroyed a legacy of dominance. Going to be a fun weekend this time out. 2 new drivers.
My goodness, you have just polarized the fan base in the opening 1 minute of the episode. Just so that everybody knows, for those who didn't get it, Somil was being sarcastic, right?
No,
I'm guessing you were... Come on,
ESPN
Somil,
F1 said that there is going to be an 11th team in Formula One. I can at least try to copy their report and be partially true. No?
And, okay, 11th team in Formula One, and everybody thinks of Andretti. And this is probably a good time to bring in the fact that the FIA's process, the formal process, and now I'm serious. So formal process ended on 30th of June. So when next will the FIA actually say if a team has made it through to the next round or not? And rumors say that 2 teams actually are going through the next phase, which is what we don't know what is, but that's just the most serious thing I'm going to say in the opening few minutes.
Yes, quite clearly. Let's get back to the banter because, folks, now it's not just Kunal and myself for the last few months like it has been. We also, thankfully, after so many months, have F1 Stats Guru back again. Sundaram, so awesome to firstly see you because I haven't quite for a month as well because Mumbai rains. They're a little bit of a ridiculous thing. But what an occasion to be recording this again because we have a brand new Formula One team. And after years of planning, it's not the American team called Andretti or Cadillac or something else. It's the Apex Racing team that's back in. Strange.
Yeah, we have 11th team on the grid finally after a very long time. And what I'm most excited to see is that we finally have 2 American drivers on the grid. And one of them is not Colton Herta, but actually Brad Pitt. And I think that's the first time we've had 2 Americans on the grid in 40 years. I think it goes back to 1983. We had Danny Sullivan and Eddie Cheever in the 1983 season. So I think Colton Herta wouldn't be nice. I think he's already he's not pleased with seeing Brad Pitt get a super license before him. But that's how it is.
You mean that Logan Sargent won't be the most popular American driver on the grid this weekend?
He's second in a 1-horse race.
But I'll tell you what, and this is the marketer in me. Brad Pitt is really missing a point. Instead of using his name as Sonny Hayes, and the last 3 letters would be Hay, he should have just used Brad Pitt. He would have been PIT on the timing boards, God. Right?
Come on.
Yeah, Joshua Pierce will be P. I mean, okay, fine. But I think everybody's interested in what Brad Pitt and PIT. And I think they had run some social media post on this in Miami or whichever race he visited last year. But yes, 11th team. I wish somebody... I wonder, will the team principal of this team appear in the team principals conference? And will Tom Clarkson ask what his dilution fee was? Was it $200 million, or was it 500 million, or whatever? I wonder if Sonny Hayes and Joshua Pierce will appear in the drivers' press conferences, and so on. So many questions, and we'll see if we get answers.
Yeah, quite a lot of fun. It's going to be amazing. 11 team racing this time out. But it kind of feels a lot like Fernando Alonso, a middle-aged driver who's had a very interesting story, randomly being put into a car that's just not very fast. Have I seen the story before, Sundaram? Ever?
That's exactly what I thought as well while reading the whatever that was revealed of the storyline, that an F1 veteran comes back to the sport and he's mentoring a rookie driver. So I don't know who are they referring to here. Is that Nick DeVries? Is it Logan Sargent? Or I have no clue. But then that's the first thought that came across my mind when they said
Bro,
F1
it's
veteran
just
returning
driven,
to the
Kunal.
sport.
It's just the movie driven. It's
But wait, we don't know the plot. Does Joshua Pierce's father own Apex Grand Prix? That's the moot question, remember. That's the moot question. And anyway, but the truth is they're going to be racing modified Formula 2 cars that look like Formula 1. Mercedes has helped them. Lewis Hamilton is involved in the project as a consultant. There are already garages made, and so on. So I mean, frankly, I love the fact that Formula One is embracing this side of bringing in new fans. I think it's great. Drive to Survive, Apex, and for long I've said movies like Rush actually did fantastic to bring new bases to Formula One. And so I'd love to see how this whole thing comes up, but I definitely see Brad Pitt stealing the headlines this weekend.
Yeah, just not Brad Pitt. There's also going to be so much more on Lewis Hamilton as well. So much more on who wins the F1.5 battle. But let's just get to a really interesting trivia question before that. We need to tell you who we are, because you might be thinking, who are these random three people talking about Brad Pitt and Joshua Pierce and whoever that might be? Well, this, folks, in case you haven't quite figured out, is the Inside Line F1 podcast. Normally, we tend to just casually banter around for a couple of minutes, but this time off, it feels like a celebration. It feels like a party, and why shouldn't it be? And of course, my name is Samal Arora. I'm the host of the Indian Racing League on Star Sports. Joining me is Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team, the proper old 11 team on the Formula One grid, but they were never 11 when Force India was around. It was always either 13 or 10 or whatever it might be. But the point is, he was that, and he's also an FIA accredited F1 journalist. And we also have F1 Stats Guru back on, as I mentioned earlier on. Fresh from, of course, now also being nominated in the WTF1 talent list. I can see the smile over there, Sundaram.
Yes, yeah. Thanks for the
You
introduction. I
can
think
puff your chest a little bit more now. Come on.
yeah, I think I heard that from the last episode as well. I'm like, okay, he's mentioned this one, but interesting. Okay, let's move to the.
Of course, but we are so proud that you've made it on that talent roster list with all those
Seriously.
amazing stats and graphics that you make. So congratulations on being added there.
Thank you for the promotion. I will never get used to this. I will never get used to this in person, and even on podcast episodes, I would never get used to
Oh,
this.
you have no idea, guys. We are recording this online, and then in the summer break, we will record this in the studio, and we will totally banter the hell out of this.
Yes.
and Mr. F1 Stats Guru.
But for real, before we move on to the really fun trivia question that you had in mind, Sundaram, we actually, in all of our events so far as well, right? Because I know you haven't been able to make it because the rains and everything. We can't quite do that. But every single time there have been people asking, where have you been? So that's one thing as well. And by the way, folks, if you are also listening in and are from Mumbai, we are having another event at Car Social this Sunday, and we'd love for you to join in. What happens over there? Well, quite simply, we just get together as a community and watch Formula One. And also, there's a really fun pre-race and post-race show, along with a quiz that F1 Stats Guru himself will also be preparing. It'll be a lot of fun. Come join us, come meet us. Let's watch the race together. And let's also watch Lewis Hamilton also do well, because that for some reason always happens. But that's not the point that we're going to be making right now, Sundaram. What we have to get to is a really fun question that you've been making us wait for a while. Now I can't wait. Tell me, what's it about?
It's a very simple trivia question. Don't overhype it. The fact is that Silverstone, or the British Grand Prix, is the home race for a lot of drivers and a lot of teams as well. So you have 10 seconds to answer which are the 4 teams on the grid that don't have their bases in the United Kingdom, and where are the bases situated.
3.
Time starts now.
Hindwell Sauber, Ferrari Maranello, Think, Kunal. Toro Rosso.
Alpha Tauri,
Yep. Same thing. Toro Rosso. Same thing.
Haas.
No, Haas has a base
There we
in
go.
Banbury.
No, but
Well,
Haas's headquarters is in the US. Yeah,
also, Alpha Tauri
also.
has a base in Bicester or by I think that's the
Yeah.
pronunciation. But yeah, I get it's like a remote setup, just because you have one employee sitting somewhere remotely doesn't mean you have an office there. But I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Did we get all of them?
No, but unfortunately, I have to disqualify you because Saumil said Sauber, and Sauber is not on the grid this year.
Oh,
It is
No, wait a minute.
way.
No, Sauber.
way.
I think it's 50% Sauber from this year, or 20 or
I'm
25%.
going by the title name, so that is
Okay,
Alfa Romeo
fair enough.
Racing.
Okay.
No, but it's true though, and it feels like home for so many of these teams, which is why we're also having so many upgrades come up as well, and none more significant, obviously, that people are talking about than McLaren. Strangely, Sundaram, because now it's like they've come up with a special-looking car as well. Let's also talk about that for a second. But in Austria, it seemed like they cleared the cache out of their chrome, and suddenly the car is going faster. Did that land?
That that took me a little.
It landed better when we were prepping,
Yeah.
actually. Nah.
Yeah.
But is that really a chrome livery though? Like 10% chrome on the car. Does that count?
I think they were faster in Austria because probably they did clear the cache, but let's see how they perform at Silverstone. Because what I feel is that it could perhaps be maybe a one-off. Now, see, McLaren's coming up with upgrades, so they have a 3-race plan. They're going to be bringing upgrades across the next 2 races as well. But the other thing is that McLaren and Lando Norris, they really do well in Austria anyway. And I think it kind of coincided with Aston Martin and Mercedes not having a fast enough car. So that's also probably why McLaren did much better than the others. And it's going to be very interesting to see if their upgrades also suit this particular track and how well Lando Norris goes over here.
And now, Kunal, Oscar Piastri has the upgraded car as well.
They do. But you know what? McLaren cannot score more than 12 points at a Grand Prix weekend because they've had 2 big spikes. They've scored in total, they have 29 points, out of which 24 points have come over 2 races. Austria and Australia, again, similar sounding countries, although diametrically opposite in everything and distance and so on, which means if they have to maximize the score, they're still going to just peak out at 12 points. But yeah, it's their home race, 3-race plan, etc., etc. Piastri, last weekend, everybody was like, oh God, he's as slow or even slower than Ricciardo. But the truth is he didn't have those upgrades. So what can he do with those upgrades? But either way, even with those upgrades, I'd love to see if McLaren are able to do anything because they're just about almost half the points of Alpine in 5th place. So let's see how that goes. But, it's a home race for a lot of teams, a lot of drivers. We are going to see, like you said, McLaren has, the chrome livery. Williams, as we know, will have a modified livery for their 800th Grand Prix. Aston Martin is doing something. I'm pretty sure Norris, Hamilton, Russell, they will have modified helmet designs. Everything suddenly just becomes more special, they believe, when there are modifications. I don't come from that school of thought. But we will have modified cars with everybody expected to bring upgrades this weekend.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. And what I've noticed is that every team that's brought upgrades, they've initially, at least, they've done well. So the likes of Ferrari, McLaren, and even Mercedes. But then Mercedes in Austria, they didn't really have the best of races, and a lot of focus is also going to be put on them. And also probably even Ferrari to see if those upgrades do well even across these type of circuits. So I think you're going to be looking at many teams who've brought in upgrades and to see if that really works for different types of circuits.
And the best part of it all is we can properly test out the upgrades because we now, for good, have 3 practice sessions, which is great in the first place. And it helps out with more of the simulation stuff. But also, as a track as well, right? Every single time we've been to Silverstone, we get to see some great racing, especially on the first lap. It's a track that allows drivers to attack. And that, for me, is brilliant because nowadays, especially in the last couple of rounds, we are seeing the gap in the field being cut down massively. Qualifying times have obviously been coming down bit by bit. Last time in Austria, it was just the whole field covered by 8/10. Obviously, it'll be more in Silverstone because we have more corners. But nevertheless, the gaps have been shrinking. Teams have been able to follow. And at a circuit like Silverstone, if there is a car placed slightly on the wrong side in terms of the qualifying order, the racing will be fantastic. I mean, just remember, a year ago, Carlos Sainz won, which I will flex till death because nobody remembers it. But apart from that as well, we saw Lewis Hamilton make double overtakes. We saw battles for not the race win, but at least for podium places properly. And so this fight for P1 in F1.5 will be fantastic. Let's not care about the race win. Nobody matters. We'll get to the important milestones and numbers. But the interesting point is, Sundaram, there is genuine uncertainty because Ferrari have now picked up the pace in seemingly qualifying. Mercedes have new upgrades. This theoretically should be a good Aston Martin circuit, and there's obviously the new livery curse or boon as well. Like every time a team brings a new special livery, they just have some extra performance. So all the sensible points and one banter point aside, this will turn out to be a really great fight for P1.
I genuinely think this is going to be an exciting race on that front. So first of all, let's talk about Carlos Sainz. You mentioned Carlos Sainz flexing. I really don't think he would want to flex his results after last year's win in Britain because since his last win, he's taken only 3 podiums. Alonso's taken 6 and Leclerc's taken 9. So although he's been very consistent in terms of results, he unfortunately has not been there up in the top 3. But I'm just going to give out my prediction for this week already. I think we're going to see a different race winner this time out because I'm someone who believes in the law of averages. Although Verstappen is incredibly dominant at this point of time, he's on his longest win streak. He's never won 6 races in a row. He's currently on 5. Red Bull's on their longest win streak, which is currently 10. And they've not had... So I hope, our listeners don't hate me for this, but at some point, there's going to be something that goes wrong. And I feel it could be this particular race.
Let's see. That's, it was like the third stop that Verstappen made. Red Bull were a little nervous. Adrian Newey came around and said, that these things are always on the edge. I get a feeling it's going to be Max dominant again. Like Sommel said, Formula One, just forget it. Max is leading the Constructors' Championship. Less than halfway through the season, he's leading the Constructors' Championship. In fact, why don't I break down his numbers before I go back to talking about the circuit? Max has 229 points from how many of our races we've done. I think 10 races, but for some 11th race officially, but Imola was cancelled. I don't know why they just don't remove it and say
9 races so far. 9 races, sorry. 9 races.
There we go. 9 races so far. There we go. So some maths. Okay. Max has 229 points. Mercedes P2 in the Constructors' Championship is only 178 points. Now, this is something we all know. Drivers from P8 to P20, which is George Russell to Nick de Vries, are only at 221 points. So even if all of them gang up and form like a coalition party and say, let's go try and beat Max, they can't because Max is already ahead of them. Okay. Teams from P5 to P10, that's Alpine to AlphaTauri, again, if they gang up, it's still just 105 points. Okay. So Max Verstappen, this is that season. Lewis had that 1 season or 2 seasons. Maybe now, this is where the Orange Army that listens in will say, no, Lewis had those 7 seasons where he just kept making records. And this is one of those Max's seasons to sort of make records. But I'll tell you, we just going back to the circuit. Sommel, you spoke of the opening lap. What I love about the opening lap here is when you start, the first braking for a corner is actually on turn 3, which is Village. Okay. And I absolutely love that. This is a legendary circuit layout. Doesn't matter where you start from, given that there are different places they've started from. The front left always keeps being loaded. I think turns 1, 8, 9, whatever, 10, 11, 12, all of them keep going. But the interesting thing, after Monaco, this is the only circuit where you don't take turn numbers, but actually call them by names. And I absolutely just love that.
Yes, I love it so much. Maggots, Beckett's, Chapel, Copse, Stowe, the Sir Lewis Hamilton Straight as well, Sundaram.
The other interesting point, Kunal mentioned that the first braking point is only around turn 3. And that's exactly why we don't have DRS on the main straight, on the Hamilton straight. Yeah. Just because there is no braking point around turn 1. And cars do need that downforce, so their DRS flaps have to be closed around turn one, and that's why there is no DRS zone along the main straight. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting race also in other aspects. It's going to be a high degradation race, probably two stops or even more, and we have a new construction of tires from
Yeah.
Pirelli this weekend, so that could probably mean drivers are able to push a lot more, the hardest compounds coming into this race. So in that sense as well, I think it's going to be very exciting.
And I love the fact, like one of the teams actually said that the overtaking difficulty, I think this was Aston Martin, they said the overtaking difficulty at Silverstone is close to average. And I actually like that, because when I think back of Silverstone, I actually don't remember a lot of overtakes, but I remember a lot of battles.
Yeah.
And I don't know who won the battle, but I know that there was a battle. And that's what I think Silverstone will bring us, a lot of those kind of battles, which is what I would love for the new Formula One fans to enjoy, not just, see flick of a button, wing opens, and boom, you just go down, but a lot of overtakes. And one of the other things about the whole circuit, yes, wind will be a big factor. It's an open field. Also, Silverstone is where teams don't really have to focus on cooling because it's an open air sort of circuit, but they can focus on aero efficiency, which is sort of cars just sort of being tuned in to drive to their actual performance rather than giving some compromises to help the packages cool and so on. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be a very, very exciting race weekend. 11th team upgrades, whatever you call it, or not. And Sundaram's already given his prediction. I get a feeling we will see Fernando Alonso back in P2, even though I voted for it last time. It's again this law of averages. I'm going to say it 20 times and he'll probably get it 15 times in the year. He'll probably be back at P2. But I don't know where Checo Perez is necessarily going to finish. But I'm also going to quote what Juan Pablo Montoya said. He said Max should just win all the races and shut everybody up.
Yeah, nothing left to say anymore. Seriously, nothing left to say anymore in that regard as well. But there is something left to say about Sergio Perez, because now we only have one opportunity for Sergio Perez to nail qualifying, which is hard to do, guys. This should be a challenging one.
I hope he has a good race weekend this time out. You can probably forgive him a little last time for not being completely 100%, but you really can't have 4 consecutive weekends in that fast car and not make it to Q3. So obviously there's going to be a lot of pressure on him in qualifying, especially to kind of show that, yeah, I can keep it together and not get past track limits. Oh, is that going to be a talking point this weekend as well?
I think it will.
Will it?
I think it'll be so. Yeah, I'll tell you why. I don't think it's going to be only about Silverstone. I get a feeling it's also still going to continue to be about Austria. Because let's put it this way. Firstly, we know of the delays. Secondly, we know that there were 1,200, more than 1,200, violations, but only 83 lap times were deleted. And then finally, only some 8 or 10 or 12 odd drivers had some penalties and so on. Somebody has to sit and do the math that if there were 1,200 notifications and after every fourth notification, you got a 5-second penalty and then a 10-second on the fifth one and a reset and so on. How is it that just 83 lap times were deleted? But anyway, I'm just saying that track limits will be on focus because the FIA, I hope somebody at least goes and asks them for more clarity, saying, guys, how did you all actually do this in Austria?
And then again, as I mentioned in the last episode, maybe we will have a big 24-page report that says a grand total of nothing. But I hope they find a solution to this eventually. And I think it'll be fun to, at some point, get into that serious chat of why a gravel trap won't really solve everything and not every circuit can have it. But maybe not for this time out, because we know that Silverstone, things are fine the way they are over there. But I really want to now chat about the calendar. Because guys, Formula One has apparently made a big move to try and be more regionalized. And so they've gone for 24 races. They've gone for Bahrain and Saudi Arabia to have races on Saturday, to, of course, respect the festival of Ramadan, because they have some significant day on Sunday, so they can't quite do it there for both of those races. But that's still fine. I think that's still okay. The worst part, Japan is being moved to April, Kunal. April. That's criminally
Why
early.
worst?
Criminally early.
I mean, I think it's great.
No. It's just wrong.
I
It's
mean,
just
it's
wrong.
colder and wetter in Japan. And why not? I mean, I'd love to see how
Uh,
that goes, which technically means that the Japs will, between October and April, so in about 6 months, they will have two Grand Prix, which means they have more tickets to sell, etc. But Japan is always an easy sell. But I think it's a March to December calendar again, extremely long, but that's just how it goes. We've got 24 races packed in. Let's see if it still remains 24. China still pays to remain on the calendar, even if they don't pay to actually host the race. I'm assuming they pay. And the most interesting part of all of this was the way in which it was announced. Up until now, there was always Formula One announcing, here's a provisional calendar subject to approval by the World Motorsport Council, which would typically meet end of August or September and announce. But guess what? Now it's just a formal announcement that, hey, everything, I don't know if the WMSC has still signed off or no, but there is no mention of that. So maybe some things, I know it's not changed in terms of approval process, but they probably just got the WMSC to sort of meet earlier and announce the calendar. So ticket sales can start earlier. I mean, a cousin of mine was looking for race tickets for Canada next year, and one of the grandstands is sold out already.
huh. Already. Is it the launch tool grandstand? Because it's been brought out by the team. Sorry, I'll never stop. I'll never stop on the launch tool grandstand. But is there anything that you like or dislike about the calendar, Sundaram? Because Japan in April, just doesn't fit right. Ugh. No.
I think, I mean, like Kunal mentioned, it also caught me by surprise because I was mentally preparing myself to plan for a race visit next year, somewhere around August or September, and then they just dropped it today, and I was like, whoa, that's quick. But I think the claim by Formula One calling it a big step towards regionalization, I think it's a little misleading because although we have swapped Japan and Azerbaijan, I don't think so. There's been much regionalization. Apart from that, you still have to come to the United States in 3 different months. And I don't know if you can optimize it. How much more can you optimize it beyond this? Because obviously you need to have a little bit of a gap between races in the same country. It's the same between the Imola race and the Monza race. So there's a couple of months in between them. How much more can they really optimize it? And
Yeah.
the one thing that really worries me is the length of the calendar. It's 24 right now. Probably it might reduce if it gets dropped. But then F1 is targeting 25 races at some point of time,
Sheesh.
and add all the tests in between here and there. It seems really really hectic.
Yeah. Get a break, guys. I think less is more. I get why Formula One is doing what they're doing, but at some point you've got to miss the sport as well, right, Kunal?
Exactly,
I
exactly.
mean, less is more comes from a podcast that releases 60 episodes a year. So I'm not sure we are following less is more. Less is more comes from somebody who has 60 tweets a week or whatever. I don't know. 60 is just a number, but yeah.
No, but still, I
Uh,
mean, it does.
but less is never more when it comes to modified liveries and helmet design. I still can never get over it. But anyway, less is more when it comes to Ferrari not making mistakes. They got two races in a row right, which I think is fantastic. But a very interesting trend that I've noticed: Ferrari scored 0 points in Australia, as we know.
Mhm.
In Azerbaijan, they scored a podium. Since Azerbaijan, they have actually outscored Mercedes and Aston Martin. And the point score since Azerbaijan is Ferrari is 128 points, Mercedes is 122 points, Aston Martin is 110 points. So will they continue this trend? I'd love to see that. But the main question in my head, and you're not going to like this, Somil, is
Uh-huh.
which driver will actually intimidate Carlos Sainz this weekend at Silverstone?
I think it's not a driver. I think it's I think how many is it now? Haas tried three, but six people sitting behind a wall. I think they are going to be the most intimidating people of them all. Because no matter what happens, strategy eventually becomes a problem for them. Always.
Yeah,
They've been
I'm
doing well though, Kunal. I mean, lately they've been making mistakes and still somehow things have been working fine. So
and we'll still have that. It's that every race, Carlos Sainz has to give a disappointed radio message on the radio. But I love how he is still so secure about his seat. And it should be so. I mean, it's a high performance sport. Just because he's critical and playing driver and race engineer and race strategist doesn't mean that, Ferrari don't basically I think in his next renewal, he should ask for 3x the money because he's currently being paid for one role, but he's doing 3 times the role, much like everyone's jobs, we know. So he should probably just ask for 3x the money. But there are also, talking of three, there are three drivers who scored at every Grand Prix weekend this year. That's the three world champions, Max, Fernando, and Lewis. And I really hope that continues as well. And interestingly, and this is where F1 Stats Guru, I'm sure, has something to say. And I hate this fact that, there was that one year in 2020 where Silverstone had two races by two different names. But in the last 12 years, Pole has won just 4 times. But the driver starting from P2 has won 6 times. So if Perez actually manages to be half a second off, but still in P2, statistically, he might have a higher probability of winning the race this Sunday.
If Perez reaches P2, you mean?
Oh, good point. Good point.
This is where all our listeners in Mexico are going to get really annoyed. But
No, but it's an interesting point because the Red Bull would want both their drivers to do particularly well. I mean, Sergio Perez, obviously, because he's not had the best of results off lately. But if both of the drivers get on the podium this weekend, it'll be Red Bull's 250th podium in Formula One. And actually, the 200th podium was not a long time ago. It was in USA 2021. So just a year and a half later, this could be the 250th. And the other important milestone from the Red Bull camp is that this is Max Verstappen's 150th race start with the Red Bull team.
Sheesh. 150 is a lot, dude. I think he just started out. It feels.
And he still has 5 years on his contract. He still has
still
5
has
years on his
5 years.
contract.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll stick around though, because when Helmut Marko came on the show a couple of, it's been a couple of weeks actually, but when he came on a couple of weeks ago, he quite clearly said, well, we're still planning for Max going because we know that it's a possibility that could happen at any given moment in time. Let's just hope he informs us. But let's also now talk about the
wait.
Yeah.
You can't move on from Helmut Marko by just leaving him like that because, we have to keep flexing that we had Helmut Marko. We'll continue to do that for a long, long time, people. But yeah, that's me just taking a pause to say, yes, we'll keep flexing it. Just as I think I know where you're going, because there is a post-race test at Silverstone. It's a tire test. I think everybody's excited about the tire test because everyone wants to know, or at least I'm not really eager what tires they test, with blankets, without blankets. I don't care. But it seems that everyone's eyes are going to be on Daniel Ricciardo driving that Red Bull. And, there's been a lot of positive noise. He's back to the fierceness, feisty self that he was, in the simulator. That's what Horner's just said a couple of days ago. Will Daniel be the Daniel of the old, etc.? That's what Red Bull is going to evaluate. I wonder, Somal, if he's going to have the helmet lap in real life, as we know. But yeah, there we go. That's the post British Grand Prix test, which we won't have coverage of, but I'm sure everybody's going to keep tracking lap times.
I think we're all going to do that. But yeah, you're right. That's going to be so interesting. How much pace does Daniel Ricciardo have eventually? But also, one last thing before we wrap up this episode as well. Sundaram, the midfield is going to be crazy this time because we're having 2 new liveries in the midfield anyway. Of course, we mentioned McLaren and the Chrome, but there is Williams who's come up with a downgrade of their original car. 800 GP for them next week. So they're celebrating it this week. Strange. But there's also going to be Aston Martin with a special new livery. But the liveries aside, firstly, I want to know what you think of them. But also, in this whole midfield kerfuffle, right? Who do you think is going to be a standout? Because after last week, a lot of people have their numbers on or their money on Hulkenberg. But that is not probably the best idea in the world, it seems.
Yeah, there's lots of interesting candidates in the midfield. But you're talking about liveries first. Straight up, I don't like the McLaren one. Aston Martin is all right. I can live with it. The Williams one is also so-so, but probably not something very. It's okay. But yeah, coming to the midfield, I think there's quite a few interesting candidates in terms of updates as well. I mean, McLaren's doing well. I really don't know where Alpine have been in terms of pace in the last couple of races. They did very well in Monaco and Canada, but I would kind of hedge my bets on Hulkenberg because he does pretty well around this track. He's scored in the last 8 races at Silverstone whenever he started. So that goes back to 2013. He's in a rich vein of form, Hulkenberg, and he's even overshadowing Magnussen at this point of time. A string of Q3 appearances, so he's doing quite well over there. I'm pretty interested to see how even Tsunoda fares over the next couple of races, because he is the lead driver at AlphaTauri this season. I mean, I know we've discussed that extensively at the start of the season. Who's going to be the lead driver? Is it going to be De Vries? Is it going to be Tsunoda? And quite clearly, it is Tsunoda. But yeah,
Yeah, we do know now. But yeah, he's actually doing a better job now, Kunal. And in the midfield, that also means we get another opportunity to watch Magnussen versus De Vries, Chapter 3.
Magnussen is probably one more incident away from coming to the press and having one of his his one-liners, which then we will remember him for, like we remember him for when Nico Hulkenberg and Magnussen are mentioned in the same voice. But Logan Sargent fans, for the first time in a race in 2023, and now I'm talking of the last race in Austria, Logan finished in an odd numbered position, which was position 13th. He was always managing to finish in an even numbered position most of the times. But, the midfield, most of it, I just feel Formula 1.5 is all of midfield because everyone is bringing upgrades. And, the fluctuation, you nicely pointed out Q1 was just eight tenths, 8.5 tenths. I love the fact that despite having such a close field, Red Bull is still able to dominate, which is one thing. And I think in this whole midfield section, the upgrades, the weather, and then the track characteristics, these are typically the three variables that are causing fluctuations in performance and results, I would say.
And then we just get to see so many interesting battles within that because, for all you know, Williams might be P7 one day and then they might have an absolute stinker. And this, well, could be one of those ones because this just isn't a track theoretically that should suit them. But that's the interesting part, right? Everything is certain at the top of the field, but everything apart from that, my word, Formula One is having a great show. And yeah, we're also going to watch. What's the name again? What's the name? Sunny Hayes. Sunny Hayes. He's going to be back as well this weekend. So let's wait and watch and more of that. But in case you are in Mumbai, folks, don't forget to register for our Sunday event at Car Social. We would love to have you there, interacting and talking about Formula One with us in person and bantering about it quite a fair bit as well. So join us by registering by clicking on the link in the description of this episode. And for all you folks who aren't quite in Mumbai but still enjoyed listening to this episode, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms and also to share the Inside Line F1 podcast and to subscribe to it as well. See you for the post-race review where we will also be talking just a little bit about the tire test as well. See you folks. Take care.